Her words, delivered with a venomous smirk, sliced through the silence between us like a dagger. Of course, when you're on double the salary, why settle for meager slices of bread? I clutched the paper plate with my humble tuna sandwich and withered banana. She, on the other hand, flaunted a $27 salad that seemed to have been grown with the tears of overworked interns. But it wasn't about the food. What stung most was watching the entire break room erupt in laughter. Hyenas who'd gotten promotions and completely forgotten how they used to microwave their cheap Hot Pockets next to me 3 years ago. I remained silent, staring intently at my sandwich. As if I stared long enough, it would miraculously transform into a severance check. Ashley Bennett didn't know that just 5 minutes ago, I'd found an anonymous envelope on my desk. No return address, no note. Just a grainy, black and white printout of a system log with a timestamp of 2:47 a.m. last Saturday. File name, Manager Overtime Entry Final 2 XLSX. The thing is, our payroll system automatically locks down every Friday at 6 p.m. Everyone knows that. Everyone except. And there it was, Ashley Bennett's username, a manual adjustment entry, a full 8 hours of overtime crammed into one package for correction. Correction, my ass. I'd kept quiet for 6 months, letting her shamelessly appropriate my reports, formulas I'd been honing since the Bush administration, and turn our department into her personal stage for self-aggrandizement. She spoke in hashtags, called basic math algorithmic understanding, and referred to HR personnel as nothing less than success engineers. But something about this pay stub, it didn't just reek of deceit, it hinted at opportunity. With an audit looming, I already had a copy of this file. Then another, then 5 more. One copy I stashed on a flash drive under the insole of my old steel-toed work boots. Another I uploaded to a derelict Gmail account linked to an email I'd created back in 2004 to prank my cousin. The point wasn't to catch her. It was about choosing the right moment. Ashley Bennett had an unwavering weekly ritual. Every Monday, she held a visibility sync in Conference Room C. She juggled terms like agile adjacency and workflow waterfalls before senior management, presenting other people's achievements as her own. Every week, the old projector would treacherously switch to the shared internal drive. And so, if someone, say, me, were to upload a file with an innocent title like Quarterly Totals Final PPTX at just the right moment, and inside, like a jack-in-the-box, out popped screenshots of every bogus overtime entry she'd made in the past 5 months. Well, then maybe she'd finally know what tuna mixed with humiliation tasted like. But that was just the beginning. Far from the climax. Because this anonymous envelope had a watermark, barely perceptible, but clear if you held it to the light. Property of Compliance Wing, for internal use only, it read. Which meant only one thing, I wasn't the only one keeping tabs on her machinations. And that someone had just made their first move in the game. The next morning, I arrived at work well before dawn. Earlier than the cleaning crew, earlier than my belated pangs of conscience. My breath painted ghostly patterns on the glass doors as I, like a restless soul, watched the building come to life. One by one, the lights flickered on, dispelling the pre-dawn gloom. I strode past the silent cubicles, set my thermos on my desk with the thud of a war drum, and with the icy calm of a man about to pull the pin, opened the shared internal drive. Click of the mouse, upload. Quarterly Totals Final PPTX, that was what I called the file. The first slide modestly proclaimed, welcome. The second slide ruthlessly stated, actual revenue versus claimed hours. And then all hell broke loose. Slides 3 through 47, a dossier on Ashley Bennett, a chronicle of her overtime exploits, each item marked with time, login, and ominous red arrows pointing to where the arithmetic turned into alchemy. I closed the file, granting everyone the right to witness the truth. Set the presentation to autorun on the Conference Room C desktop. Let them see. Leaning back in my chair, I sipped my coffee as if it were the last cup before the impending storm. At precisely 9:03 a.m., Ashley Bennett appeared. A blazer the color of serpent's envy, heels clicking like harbingers of doom. She glanced at me, fleeting and almost imperceptible, and headed to her meeting as if she weren't stepping onto a goddamn minefield. An elegant swan, oblivious to the impending explosion. I crept after her, trying to remain unnoticed, but close enough to hear that irritating sound of her chewing gum popping. Conference Room C, the stage for the upcoming drama. Inside, a flock of vice presidents, directors, and, of course, that guy from marketing, always looking like he'd been caught trying to feign productivity in Excel. Ashley Bennett plugged in her laptop. The screen flickered to life. She was already prepared to spew her usual corporate synergy tirade, but then the projector switched on, and reality changed forever. The first slide, her name, in large font. The second, a faceless table. The third, a damning screenshot of a log, dated 2:47 a.m. The very one that had been in the envelope. The room seemed to grow cold, as if the very air was holding its breath, anticipating something both sacred and terrible. Ashley Bennett froze, paralyzed. "This isn't mine," she whispered, barely audible. Click. The fourth slide, a chart, again with her name in bold. Underneath, a list of calculation periods with blatant, unjustified overtime. "Looks like we have some data confusion here," Tom from finance muttered, squinting suspiciously. "Funny, we never approve weekend overtime for reconciliations. And certainly not 36 hours in 2 weeks." Ashley Bennett blinked in confusion. "That can't be, it's some kind of error. Formatting, maybe." Click. The fifth slide, a comparison of her claimed hours with the actual time spent in the system. At the top, like a sentence, a huge red banner, "Audit Warning." Someone chuckled softly. Not loudly, but enough to break the ringing silence, like fingers cracking in a funeral home. And then, like a bolt from the blue, Tiffany from internal control, who hadn't uttered a word in the last 6 months, blurted out the best line of the day, "Do you think we should interrupt the meeting? I think HR would like to see what happens next." And HR was already watching. They stood by the door, two impassive people with notebooks in hand. Ashley Bennett's hands trembled as she grabbed the HDMI cable and yanked it out, as if trying to strangle a snake woven from evidence. "This is a witch hunt," she hissed. "This is a setup." And maybe it was. Or maybe not. The moment her phone vibrated, her face seemed to frost over. Her gaze darted down, her eyelashes fluttering rapidly. Rising, she silently left the room, without a word, without touching her laptop. She just left. About 50 minutes later, she strode past my desk, her gaze fixed on the void, her lips drawn into a thin, impenetrable line. In her hands, a cardboard box, the receptacle of the wreckage of her career, everything she managed to grab in those meager 60 seconds. There was her favorite coffee mug, a small cactus, the book Atomic Habits, and expensive noise-canceling headphones, still connected to the office computer from which she had been torn. But it was too early to celebrate. She left something behind. Her spare phone. And I knew the password. What I discovered within its depths made her overtime shenanigans look like child's play compared to what was really going on. At first, the phone wasn't password protected at all, just her fingerprint. I had seen her touch it with her left thumb hundreds of times in meetings. But I never paid attention to the tiny smudge that remained in the corner of the screen. The smudge from her finger was still darkening the screen when I, picking up the phone she had hastily abandoned from the desk, sneaked into the janitor's closet on the 2nd floor. There, by some inexplicable quirk, the Wi-Fi was better. Pressing my finger to the familiar trace, I unlocked the device. My heart pounded in anticipation of compromising material, dirty messages, maybe a couple of emails that would make you sweat. But instead, I stumbled upon a hidden folder in the photo gallery, cynically titled Old Receipts. Inside, there were no receipts. Only chilling screenshots, hundreds of them. Salary backends, tax category manipulations, fake accounts. In one image, a draft email from the CFO's account, with attachments ready to send, like a deadly cargo. In another, the redirection of employee benefits to some shady, unknown shell company. And then I saw a folder whose very name sent a chill down my spine, bench. Inside, a list of names. And my name on that damn list. Next to each name, short, ominous notes. My knows too much, probably suspects something. Watch quarterly reports closely. Do not copy under any circumstances. The next entry read, Tom from Finance will likely raise a fuss if discrepancies in packages exceed 5%. She kept us all under surveillance, not just watching, but as if weaving a web of the future. Each of her victims, each team she poisoned with doubt, she meticulously documented, like an exterminator marking areas of infestation. She even had a spreadsheet, a huge, color-coded electronic one, detailing who had contacted HR and how she covered her tracks. But the real gem of her collection, buried deep in the voice notes, was disguised under the innocuous title boardroom rehearsal. I listened. It was her practicing a speech about why she should head up the West Coast Division. But then, in the middle of the monologue, she broke down, went silent, sighed heavily, and whispered, "They'll believe anything if you look miserable enough. I'm going to burn this old guard to the ground, and then it will all be mine. All of it." And she laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh, more like the sound of a scalpel, ruthless and chilling. She had planned everything, and clearly not alone. The last file was a screen recording clearly showing a large bank transfer into her offshore account. The sender's name was hidden, but the payment description was seared into my memory, for services Stage 2. There was no such stage in our system. Bursting out of the janitor's closet, I felt my heart pounding, like I had stolen the Pentagon's secret blueprints. This was bigger than just Ashley Bennett's fraud. I had stumbled upon a meticulously planned takeover, a quiet, methodical operation to bleed our company dry. And Ashley was just the enforcer, the scalpel in the surgeon's hand. Now I had that scalpel, and I knew where to point it. But first, I needed leverage. Something that wouldn't just get this snake fired, but would make someone talk. The question throbbed in my head, who slipped me that envelope? Someone in compliance was feeding me ammunition, but clearly not out of a sense of justice. I was just being used as a pawn, someone to pull the trigger. And I was going to find out why. It was 2:12 a.m. when I headed to the place no one would think to hide evidence, the third-floor printing room. No cameras there. No one bothered to check the printer logs. Why would they? Printers aren't thieves. They just hum quietly in the corner while people ruin their lives, transferring them to paper. I printed everything, the transcript of the voice note, the bank check, the diagram of the convoluted offshore transfers, her personal notes. Each sheet, still warm, reeked of toner and damning truth. I put the evidence in a manila folder, sealed it, and wrote in large letters, "For auditors' eyes only." But I didn't deliver it. Not yet. I needed to understand how deep this rabbit hole went. Who else had left their grubby fingerprints on this mess? Ashley Bennett wasn't just approving timecards. She was transferring money, rerouting bonuses, creating fake contractors with invoices signed by someone higher up than me. And I had a theory. A few months ago, one of the higher-ups, Walter Jenkins, 50-ish, perpetually in suspenders and smelling of citrus cologne and unpaid alimony, started showing up at payroll audits. I always noticed him. He'd walk by with this strange look, asking meticulous questions about our benefits recalibration system. You don't ask those questions unless you already know the answers and are testing someone's awareness. At the time, I thought he was angling for Ashley Bennett's job. How naive I was. It turned out he was the one who put her there. And that's when the offended middle-aged accountant with a god complex kicked in. I decided to bait him, sending an innocuous email in the morning, "Hi Walter, just a heads up. Found some discrepancies in the reconciliation. Flagged them for now. Might be nothing. Just wanted you to take a look before audit picks up steam." Exactly 12 minutes later, Walter replied, "Appreciate the diligence. All under control." Seemingly nothing, right? But I hadn't mentioned what discrepancies I was talking about. Which meant he already knew. That same day, I got an IM in the team chat from an unfamiliar account, just initials. No photo. The message was just 3 words: "We need to talk." I didn't send that damn envelope, but I knew who did. And those people wanted me to deliver something far worse than the truth. "User is offline," the words burned into my brain. The hair on my forearms stood up, like they were being scanned like a barcode. Someone was playing a complicated game, feeding me crumbs of information so I would take down Ashley Bennett. But now that she was gone, they wanted me to finish what I started. That meant only one thing: they had bigger fish to fry, and I was just a mop in their hands. I ran that username through our internal database. Nothing. Then it hit me. I remembered Ashley Bennett once saying something at a budget meeting, back when she thought I was furniture. If Kevin finds out about this, I'm toast. At the time, I thought she was talking about a consultant. Now I realized, Kevin wasn't someone she answered to. Kevin was someone she feared. That night, I stayed at work later than everyone else, after the cleaners, after the accountant who claimed to be working overtime but was actually watching mixed martial arts fights on YouTube. I was waiting. And right before midnight, a light flickered on in the compliance wing. Just one office, one silhouette. A tall, lean man. I crept down the hallway like a thief, clutching a folder that burned like evidence. Each step echoed loudly, bringing me closer to the point of no return. A light knock on the door. It swung open, and there he was, Kevin Sterling, head of internal audit, a man of iron whose lips only parted when someone lost the company money or its good name. His gaze, heavy and scrutinizing, shifted from me to the folder. "Ah, so it has surfaced," he said quietly, but there was steel in his voice. "So the body has finally floated to the top." I held out the folder, but my fingers clung to it with a death grip. "Why me?" I blurted out. In response, he gave me a crooked, sinister smirk, as if the devil himself had been caught reading the Psalms. "Because you don't want a raise," he snapped. "You crave justice. And that makes you useful." I unclenched my fingers, letting go of the folder. But at that moment, I realized, this wasn't justice. This was war. And I had just been drafted. Sterling sank into a silence that weighed on me like a slab of concrete. He sat motionless, flipping through the pages, and I could see thoughts being born and dying in the depths of his eyes, calculations being made, and the balance of power shifting. "Justice, you say?" he muttered finally, his voice a mix of admiration and bitter cynicism. "How touching. Do you fancy yourself the only knight in shining armor in this swamp?" I stood frozen, not demanding an answer, not asking permission, just longing for this charade to end. Kevin's office gaped with emptiness, permeated by cold, sterile air, like an operating room. A half-empty bookshelf, a withered flower, seemingly forgotten since the millennium, and a desk, maniacally clean, except for one thing, an old, faded plaque nailed to the wall. It screamed, integrity above all. Irony oozed in the air like cheap cologne, and I had no desire to breathe it in. "Are you sure you've grasped the essence of it?" Kevin continued, flipping through the pages of the folder with disgust. His lips twisted into a contemptuous smirk. "You think the whole problem is Ashley Bennett? She's just a symptom, my friend. A symptom of a much deeper rot." I remained silent, burning him with my gaze, pushing him toward the point. "You're right about Ashley Bennett," Kevin spat, tossing the folder aside as if it were garbage. His eyes darted around, betraying hidden agitation. "She was laundering sums far exceeding her salary. But it goes beyond her alone, beyond this company, beyond all of us." My heart lurched and plummeted into the abyss. There was something ominous in his voice, as if he were talking not to me, but to a ghost in his head, or perhaps to an invisible interlocutor in this sterile office. Glancing around the immaculate room, I confirmed, there was no one else here besides us. "Who else is involved?" I asked, trying to maintain an impassive tone, though adrenaline was already burning my chest. Kevin leaned back in his chair, folding his hands in front of his face, as if contemplating whether to finish me off with the truth or simply quietly eliminate me. A long, agonizing pause seemed to last an eternity. Finally, he said, "Have you ever wondered why this audit week only happens once a year? Because we decided it that way. We put on a show for them so the employees feel safe. We perform a play, note for note. I blinked in stunned disbelief. Are you saying that all this pretense, it's part of a carefully crafted plan? Kevin didn't betray a single emotion. Not even a muscle twitched. You don't understand. The pretense is the plan itself. Audit week. It's a diversion. A smokescreen behind which something much bigger is hidden. They pulled this off many years ago, and with each passing year, the scheme becomes more sophisticated, more refined. A bad feeling twisted in my gut. Who's behind it? I asked, feeling the anxiety rising inside. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, Kevin got up and walked over to the window, staring out at the city sprawling below. The lights twinkled in the distance, indifferent to the rot that was eating away at the walls of our company from within. The real players don't dig through payroll ledgers, son, he said finally, his voice like ice. They don't even sit in this building. You want answers? You want to know who's really pulling the strings? It's those who don't need to be here. The weight of his words crashed down on me, reality crushing my ribs like a steel vice. I'm not in the mood for games, Kevin. Neither am I. Oh, you're playing, he interrupted, turning to me with a strange glint in his eyes. You just don't realize it yet. Before I could ask my next question, Kevin ducked under the desk and pulled out a thick manila envelope. He threw it on the desk next to the folder I had brought him. You're in over your head, Kevin said, his voice as sharp as a knife scraping against bone. But take this. Look at it. This is the real game. He pointed to the envelope, and his eyes held a warning and, even fear. The tension in the room thickened as I slowly opened the envelope. Inside was something that made my blood run cold. A list of names. Not just any names, but a constellation of high-ranking executives, not only from our company but from everyone even remotely connected to us. And at the head of this ominous list, like a sentence, was highlighted in bold, Walter Jenkins. Walter. The same Walter who always stayed in the shadows, asked leading questions, crept around like a silent shadow. The one who, I naively believed, was simply aiming for Ashley Bennett's position. Kevin watched my reaction closely as I tried to process what I was seeing. He's the one who controls the flows. The money. He's been pulling the strings for years, while remaining completely invisible. A ghost. A puppeteer. Reality crashed down on me like a devastating blow to the gut. It wasn't about Ashley Bennett, or the salary fraud, or even the upcoming audit. This was a large-scale corporate conspiracy. A deeply rooted network of corruption that would take more than just a few spreadsheets to dismantle. And if I was going to survive this fight, if I intended to overthrow the real puppet masters, I would have to play by their rules. Kevin stood up abruptly, his chair screeching like a chalkboard, making me flinch. With a jerk, he took his jacket off the back of the chair and threw it over his shoulders. If I were you, I'd walk away, he said in an icy tone, his eyes burning into me. You've got enough problems as it is. But if you stubbornly keep digging, know that you're being watched. They're always watching. And as if dissolving into thin air, he disappeared, leaving me alone with the list of names. A ghost in the machine. A monstrously complex puzzle. But there was no turning back. I was in too deep. For a long time I just sat there staring at the list, as if each letter was written in blood. Walter Jenkins. Of course, it was him. The ghost who had perfectly integrated into the corporate system. The man who was playing chess while everyone else was struggling with checkers. But who was behind him? Who was pulling the strings of this puppet? And then it hit me like a jolt of electricity. It wasn't about the money. It never was. This wasn't just a small-time scam to line their pockets with extra hours. It was about control, power, a network of influence that stretched far beyond my comprehension, wrapping around our company like a deadly noose. The weight of this discovery crushed my chest like a slab. The only way to freedom was to cut the ropes, tear everything down. But that meant playing their game, and I wasn't willing to do that. The list in the envelope, Kevin's words, like a persistent echo, tormented me. "You've got enough trouble for a lifetime." I stared at the envelope again. Something about it was off, some detail I had missed the first time. I turned it over, feeling every fold, every corner. And there, at the very bottom, I noticed a tiny note, hastily scribbled by hand: "Walter isn't your biggest problem. Phase 2 is phase 2. The words seemed to wink at me. What the hell was this phase 2? What had I gotten myself into? Why was Kevin, as if sensing something was wrong, warning me? He handed me a match, and now he's telling me to run from the fire. I need to figure this out. Without wasting a second, I made a few calls. Quiet, cautious, the kind you make when you don't want the other person to realize they're being used. People from the old guard, when salary hadn't yet become a corporate battlefield. I had a reputation as someone who could be relied on, someone who kept everything under control. That made me a valuable asset to certain people. When I reached the last name on the list, Brittany from HR, I heard something I never expected. "Why do you even need phase 2? Her quiet voice asked, full of such a warning power that it sent a jolt through me. "Who told you about it?" I stammered, not knowing what to say. "What is this phase 2 of yours?" A long, drawn-out silence hung on the other end of the line. I thought the connection had been lost, but then Brittany spoke again, almost in a whisper. "You don't even know what you've gotten yourself into, do you? Phase 2 foot isn't just a project, it's a whole system. A global restructuring that goes far beyond finance. I can't say any more. Just know, you're not the first one to stick their nose in this." And the line went dead. I sat there, stunned. My fingers trembled as I put down the phone. Phase 2 isn't just a financial scheme. It's a system. A total restructuring of the company. Whatever it is, it's so grandiose that people are afraid to even mention it. I need answers, but who can I trust? Not Kevin, not Brittany, not even my own instincts, no one. The deeper I delved into this, the clearer it became. I had crossed the Rubicon. My struggle was no longer just a personal vendetta against Ashley Bennett and Walter. I had rebelled against the very system, cynically designed to silence people like me, turn us into obedient cogs, and ruthlessly discard us. But retreating was unthinkable. Not now, not after everything I had learned. I had one last, desperate chance. I needed to get to Walter, expose him, force him to lay all his cards on the table before this damned phase 2 turned the entire company into a sinister ghost ship where everyone was terrified and incapable of making decisions. I knew where to find him that evening. Walter never stayed late at work, never remained in the office after 6. But he had one weakness, one habit: an old bar near the docks. A dark, smoky hole where corporate predators drowned their dirtiest secrets in alcohol. It was time to act. I donned my best suit, as if it were armor, grabbed the folder of evidence, and walked out the door. There was no turning back. The bar assaulted me with the thick smell of stale beer and unspoken regrets. The dim light enveloped the room. There weren't many patrons, but I spotted him immediately. He sat alone at the far end of the bar, slowly sipping whiskey, as if savoring each drop. Walter Jenkins. I had always seen him as just a corporate climber. But now I knew the truth: he was a player, a pawn in a monstrous game, the scale of which I couldn't even imagine. The weight of that discovery pressed down on me like a slab of stone. I sat down next to him. Walter slowly turned his head, his eyes narrowing when he noticed me. "What do you want?" he hissed through his teeth, his voice laced with contempt. I didn't mince words. "I want to know about phase 2. He tensed, his fingers turning white as he gripped the glass. For the first time, I saw his confident mask crack. "You don't understand what you're asking," he said quietly, his voice a warning. "You've gone too far." "I'm already here," I snapped back. "And I'm not backing down." He studied me for a long moment, then sighed heavily, a crooked, cynical smirk appearing on his face. "All right," he said. "You want to know? I'll tell you." But know this, there's no turning back after this. You're already in too deep, and now there's no way out. I leaned forward, holding my breath. This was the turning point. Everything I had worked for, everything I had learned, was about to come crashing down. And Walter was about to reveal the final piece of this terrible puzzle. Walter leaned back in his chair, his face instantly turning to stone. He slowly took a sip of whiskey, his gaze darting around the bar, as if he were struggling with himself, deciding whether to reveal the truth or simply run, leaving me in the dark. But he stayed, and that was my first small victory. "You don't understand," Walter whispered, his voice hushed, as if he were afraid the words would escape against his will. "Phase 2 isn't just about us, not just about the company. It's about control. It's about restructuring everything we know for one purpose, the system." I blinked, trying to process what I was hearing. The global financial system? Everything was getting more and more complicated. "Global?" I asked, leaning forward. "You're saying this is some kind of international conspiracy?" Walter let out a short, joyless laugh, his eyes darting nervously towards the door. "You think this is just about payroll shenanigans? That's child's play. This goes all the way to the top. You think Ashley Bennett is just a greedy corporate rat? She's just a pawn in a monstrous game. Their tentacles are everywhere. Government contracts, tech giants, banks. There isn't an industry they don't touch. And you'll never see the puppet masters pulling the strings." His words, like a deadly poison, seeped into me, paralyzing me with terror and fascination. My brain raced, trying to piece the puzzle together. "So what? You're saying I should just sit back and watch this rotten system consume everything?" Walter leaned forward, his eyes burning with warning. "More than that, it's consuming us. Now you're part of this web, whether you like it or not. Once you uncovered Ashley Bennett's recycling schemes, they knew you suspected something. It's not just about what you know now, it's about what you might find out. And the deeper you dig, the harder it will be to get out alive." His words crashed down on me like a ton of lead. My mouth went dry, my palms were covered in a sticky sweat. I managed to choke out, "How deep does it go, Walter? How far do their roots extend?" My voice was just a hoarse whisper. Walter's smile was icy, with something akin to pity in it. "It goes all the way to the end. And now that you're involved, you'll see it everywhere you look. You're not a pawn anymore, no. You're a tool, a weapon in their hands. They control everything. Their influence, their leverage, it's in every aspect of your life. Hell, you've been a part of it for years and didn't even know it." I felt the ground give way beneath me. My heart hammered in my chest. This wasn't just corporate dirty play. This was a whole system, a web of power, corruption, and manipulation that had ensnared industries, governments, entire economies. "So, what now?" I asked, my voice betraying me with a tremor. "What do I do? Just go to the police, report them?" Walter gave a bleak smile, shaking his head. "The police? You think they'll believe you? They'll bury you faster than they'll start digging into this shit. No one will take you seriously unless you have leverage. And believe me, if you take this outside, they'll come after you. Destroy you before you even open your mouth." I swallowed hard, feeling each of his words press down on me like a ton of lead. "So, what now? What's the plan? Do I just sit back and watch everything crumble?" "No," Walter snapped, leaning back in his chair. "You fight. Do what you were made to do. It's too late to back down. There's too much at stake, you're in too deep. There's no turning back." It hit me like a jolt of electricity. I shot to my feet, and the room swam before my eyes. I couldn't breathe. The air turned thick, scalding, like acid. Fragments of thoughts raced through my mind, trying to make sense of what I'd heard. This was all a massive web, a shadowy, insidious network of power controlling far more than I could have imagined. I had one last chance. I snatched up my phone and dialed Kevin's number. A ring, then another. He picked up. "Kevin," I said, my voice even, but the tension was impossible to hide. "We need to meet." Silence on the other end. I heard a muffled rustle, the soft click of a lock turning. "I knew you'd come around," he finally said, and there was something almost mocking in his voice. "Snooping around, huh? Thought you could stay out of it, but you're already too deep in this game." "I'm not playing, Kevin. I'm done with the games. I know what's going on. I know what you're involved in, and I'm going to tear it all down." Kevin chuckled, and there was something sinister in the sound. "You think you're in control here? Just going to waltz in and destroy everything I built? You think you're special? Think you're any different from the puppets who tried to stop me before?" I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I'm not special, Kevin. I'm just the last one left alive." Silence hung in the air on the other end of the line, and I could almost feel Kevin calculating his options. He wasn't afraid yet, but he could feel the approach of fear. "Meet me tomorrow morning. At 10 a.m. Doyd Warehouse. You know the place." I didn't hesitate for a second. "I'll be there." I hung up, not saying another word. The game had changed. And now it was time for the final showdown. The next morning, Doyd Warehouse was as bleak as I remembered it. Gray concrete walls, broken windows, the suffocating smell of rot in the air. There was a finality to this place, an eerie silence that echoed with every step. In the center, in the dim light filtering through the shattered roof, Kevin waited. His figure was barely visible. "You came," Kevin said, his voice eerily calm for what was about to happen. "I guess I underestimated you. Thought you'd chicken out, but you're here, ready to play with fire." "I'm not playing, Kevin. I'm here to burn it all to the ground," I replied, approaching, my voice as cold as ice. "I'm exposing all of you. You, Walter, this whole rotten system." Kevin's eyes darted to the folder in my hands. He knew what was in there. It was only a matter of time before the truth came out. "You can't tear this down. It's far beyond your understanding." He stepped forward, his face inches from mine. "But you're right about one thing. The game is over. At least, for you." His words sent a chill down my spine. Like he was waiting for my next move. But it was too late for him, too. He had no idea what was coming. I threw the manila folder at his feet. "I've already made my move. Now it's your turn. You know what's inside, and soon everyone else will. The game is over." Kevin's face darkened as he crouched down to pick up the folder. He flipped through the pages, and with each passing second, the tension in his hands grew. His smug grin faded. The truth was unfolding right before him, and he knew it. "Files," he muttered. "You think this is it?" "This is nothing." But his voice wavered. The facade was starting to crumble. I leaned forward. The truth was a weapon between us. "Want to know what happens next?" I asked in a low voice. "I've already sent this to every media outlet, every news channel, every regulatory body. They'll be here in an hour. And when they arrive, this whole system you built will collapse. Your entire empire will fall, Kevin, and there's nothing you can do about it." Kevin's face went white, as if he'd been hit by a freight train. I saw fear for the first time, real fear, flash in his eyes. He reached for the phone, but it was too late. Game over. All the pieces were in motion, and there was no escaping the consequences. "You're finished," I said, each word leaving a taste of victory on my tongue. "And there's nothing you can do about it." Kevin's hands trembled, the folder slipped from his grasp, his mouth opened convulsively to say something, any excuse. But the words caught in his throat. The phone slid from his weakening grip, and he turned away, unable to face the reality I had just revealed to him. The warehouse door creaked, and the faint but growing wail of sirens carried from a distance. My phone vibrated, confirming the arrival of the first team. The truth was out. There was no turning back. Kevin was broken. The system had collapsed, and I was the one who did it. I walked out of the warehouse, my heart pounding in my chest. This isn't just a victory. It's justice.